Hi, everybody, and greetings to the show, Dave Emmons and the Strange Reality Show. I have guests that are very knowledgeable about their subject matter, and I've had lots of good guests. I have to really say that, and have been really nice doing these shows for me. And today I looked at this guy's bio and his information and his books and everything. It makes my three little published books look pretty bad compared to what this guy has done. Mike Ricksecker, and I run into him on Facebook Messenger. He seemed very interesting, so I wanted to talk to him. He's an author, researcher, and filmmaker. Researcher Mike Ricksecker is an author of the Amazon bestsellers Travels Through Time, and we're going to be talking about that, A Walk in the Shadows, and Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, as well as several historic paranormal books. He has appeared on multiple TV shows and programs, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens and the Unexplained, Travel Channel's The Alaska Triangle, Discovery's Fright Club, Animal Planet's The Haunted, multiple series on Gaia TV, and more. Mike is a producer and director. And that's another exciting part about being a book writer, also doing this, of a docuseries, The Shadow Dimension, available on ancient wisdom, lost civilizations, and the supernatural on his extensive YouTube channel. And we'll give you information how to get there. For more than 6 years, he has hosted the Edge of the Rabbit Hole live stream show and also hosts the Connecting the Universe interactive class. He operates his own book publishing and video production company. That's great. You're working hard, Mike. Really, that's really good.
A few things, yeah.
and publishing and video production company Haunted Road Media, and representing a number of authors and winning the award for excellent media in the paranormal field at the 2019 Shockfest Film Festival. Kudos to you, buddy. That's good.
Thank
Mike's
you.
historic paranormal articles have been published in the Baltimore Sun, Paranormal Underground magazine, and he has previously wrote an Oklahoma City paranormal column for Examiner.com 2010 through 2014. His work has also been featured in the Oklahoman, the Frederick News Post, Marshall University's The Parthenon, and Louisiana State University Civil War Book Review. He now hosts many of these articles along with informational videos and learning courses on the Connected Universe Portal website. You got so many specialties, it's hard to say them in a right way. But wow, a native of Cleveland, Ohio. I guess you're a baseball fan, so is that the Cleveland Red Sox? Is that no, not Boston Red Sox. Okay.
Boston Red Sox. Well, then it's funny that you mentioned that because I am a Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
Because I spent 10
that.
years. Yeah, I spent 10 years as a kid in Massachusetts. But for football, I'm a Browns fan.
Okay. And you're also an Air Force veteran with a degree in simulation programming and is an avid baseball fan, like we just said. And thank you for your service, Air Force.
Thank you, Dave.
And a Shadow Dimension docuseries. We just mentioned that. He's the director and producer of that. He'll probably get into talking about that. Then I want to show you, and I'm not a big production guy. You guys know that out there by now, but this is what he's written, all the books. And you can see most of them right there. And I just wanted to show you the page so you can go to that page, and we'll give you that information a little bit later. And Mike Ricksecker, welcome to the show, buddy. And can you add to your bio and tell us what you're doing right now?
Oh, yeah, it seems like I have a lot of irons in the fire. Yeah, if people want to check it out, the Daily Star out in the UK just ran an article yesterday in which I was talking about about time, but also the nature of the universe, the idea that we are possibly living in a simulation and things like that. So that was a decent article that they had put together concerning that. But yeah, I know the bio's a little extensive.
You got so many specialties. I was reading it, and while I did, I kind of tripped up because I thought, okay, I'm streaming into this expertise, and then all of a sudden you have
you probably could have just read the first paragraph and been good.
No, I want to give credit to my guest, and also I want to give credit to all the work that you put in. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much for enlightening people. And this is what you're doing. You're telling people what's going on in the scientific area. And we're going to talk about time. And I know that's what you want to talk about. But Mike, is there anything else you want to start off with? Anything you want to mention to the audience?
I mean, we can just roll right into it. I think you did a pretty
Okay.
good job of covering, who I am and what I do.
Yeah,
So,
I like doing that for my
cool.
guests because I want people
Yeah.
to know how hard these, you guys work and what goes on. Uh,
Mhm.
you begin your journey into the connected universe with travels through time, examination of the nature of time, dimensions, and possibilities of real time travel. Uh, could you tell us a little bit about that? How you got into this time travel thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So time travel has always been an interest of mine. When I was a kid, I really, really liked the movie Somewhere in Time, starring Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. And I'm a child of the '80s. That was right there in 1980, and really, Back to the Future is the big one from the '80s that everybody kind of gravitates to.
Right.
But for me, and I liked Back to the Future. It was fun.
Yeah.
But for me, Somewhere in Time is really where it was at. The idea that he could convince himself and will his consciousness back to another moment in time from 1980 back to 1912 just absolutely fascinated me, that he could do such a thing. So that always stuck with me. And as I started my paranormal research, getting into the supernatural and that sort of thing, I began to notice that a lot of this phenomenon was somehow related to time. Not all of it. Some of it is has other explanations, but I noticed that a lot of it you could relate back to some sort of aspect dealing with
Hmm.
time. And so I kind of kept that in my back pocket. The idea of stacked time theory came to me one day about 15 years ago as I started researching that idea out.
Could you explain that for the audience, Mike? Stack.
Yeah, yeah, stacked time theory. So this is the idea that all time is concurrent, past, present, future. So time in and of itself doesn't exist. That's just a human construct that we've come up with to try to describe our reality, to try to keep track of things like the seasons, when to plant the crops, when to show up at work at the right moment so our supervisors don't get upset with us, that sort
Mhm.
of thing. But we developed that concept and idea, and so time does not exist. Is time is all concurrent. This is our existence in the fourth dimension, and you take right where you're sitting right now, and every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen are all stacked up on top of each other, each moment like a photograph in this giant stack. Then from say the fifth dimension, sixth dimension, and on upward, you'd be able to move through that stack at will. And sometimes we get a glimpse of another one of those moments. Two of those photos, for lack of a better term, in the stack will resonate the same frequency for a moment because everything is, energy, resonance, frequency, vibration. Two of those moments will resonate the same frequency for just a moment, and one will get a glimpse of the other. We would call something like that a time slip, but a lot of other people are reporting, they might report that as a ghost or a haunting or something like that, when actually what's happening is they're seeing another moment in time, and those people that are there in that moment that they're witnessing are looking back at them as if they are the ghost or the shadow or the apparition, whatever it is they're seeing on their end.
Mhm. That movie you mentioned with Christopher Reeves, I
Mhm.
saw that too, and I saw it a couple of times. I really liked it. It had
Yeah.
a romantic touch to it. It kind of touched your
Yeah.
heart. Yeah, and
At heart, it's a romance. Yeah.
yeah, it is. And that's why I like that too. But the way you're explaining time is kind of like there's a thin veil between us and
Mhm.
the next dimension. Is that correct? And also, can you
Right.
tell us a little bit? Does this mean that we are a matrix or a hologram?
Oh, yeah, I believe that we are living in a simulation, that this universe is. I don't want to say it's a computer program. I think that we gravitate toward that because that's the height of our technology right now. Of course, we had a fantastic movie and series, the Matrix, that kind of
Right.
set us down that way of thinking. I think it's something more organic or biological in nature. It's a technology that right now the concept is beyond us, but the idea of a simulation has kind of always been with us. You look at our ancient religions when they talk about things like reincarnation.
Right.
You come from some sort of home world, some wherever that is beyond. You come down here, essentially, kind of like logging in like a computer program. You live out your life, learn some things along the way. When you pass away, it's like logging out. You go back up to wherever that is, and then you start the whole cycle over again. So it's a concept that we're used to when we do talk about computers. We're going to relate it to what we're familiar with, um, but that concept of reincarnation has been with us for thousands of years,
Yes.
through our ancient religions. Even Christianity, they talk about uh, we are in this world here right now, preparing for another world. So again, you're seeing that type of concept. They don't use the word simulation, but the idea is there.
Well, Jesus mentioned that his father has many mansions. He might have meant dimensions, to because I think they lost the technology back then because they didn't understand it like we do today. But most times, some of us understand it or want to understand it. But this idea of being a matrix, it's and a simulation. You did that or performed that duty in the Air Force as a simulator, flight simulator, right?
Yeah. So my job in the Air Force, kind of, what I ended up doing professionally after the fact, my life, yes, was in computers. I have a degree in simulation programming, and yeah, so that's kind of given me a interesting perspective on how you would make such a thing work. It's we talk about programming a some sort of system. You could look for people kind of that are a little bit more mainstream. You could look at it as a flight simulator, sure. You could look at it as a like a computer game and what have you. But if you take that, all the information is there, whether it's in a flight simulator, whether it's in, you take like Super Mario Brothers and everything came in on a cartridge, right? Everything's there. These days, everything's a download. Downloads to your computer, your phone, your PlayStation, whatever it is. But the entire program is there. So that's its own little universe. So the same thing when we're talking about all time is concurrent, it's the same type of concept. Everything is there. We are kind of stuck in what we call the river of time. So everything seems to be working out linearly.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody who is above that, outside of it, say the programmer, the architect, or what have you, they would have access to every moment freely. They know how to get in to whether it's the end, the beginning, somewhere in between. They have access to all of that. And sometimes with us, when we find, you could say, a backdoor, if we want to use computer lingo, or as I like to say, if we tune into the right frequency, we can get glimpses of those other areas of the program, the matrix, the universe, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that this there's always a seed that's planted in an author's mind when he writes a book. You got 13 books. Matter of fact, I held the page up, but you're
Yeah.
you're going to be putting out your 13th book, and that's quite prolific. But it's kind of like there's got to be a seed planted in each idea that you have. And I looked at the simulation thing that you had in the Air Force, and I thought that might have planted the seed. But you talked about the movie that also planted that seed about time travel. Are there any other things that hit you? I know that we talk about the things that really impress us or really sink into our consciousness. Are there other things that in your life that you ran into that caused you to take this turn in the road and talk about these topics, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was very young, about 8 years old, I had an interaction. Well, I ended up having several down along the way, but the first significant supernatural interaction I had was with what we would typically call a shadow person. And it seems on the surface one of those typical stories. Wake up in the middle of the night, there's this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of the room. And, I was very scared. Like I said, I was about 8 years old and I'm trying to scream and nothing's coming out of my mouth. And this thing approached my bed, leaned over. I'm staring at this blank black face. There's nothing there, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. And then it did something really unusual. It grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arms across my body, and then it ran off down the hall, of all places, into a closet. At that point, I found my voice, found my legs, and ran off screaming in my parents' bedroom. And I have very nice, kind parents that are trying to console me, calm me down, trying to tell me I just had a bad dream, but
Mhm.
knew I hadn't had a bad dream. I'd been awake for this whole thing. So, that stuck with me for throughout my childhood. When we moved out of the house, and I would never call that like a haunted house or anything like that. Um, we moved from where that was in Massachusetts back to our home state of Ohio, and I had some other interactions with something there at the house. That the second house definitely had something going on with it, and it was more shadows, but of a really, really different nature. So, I had these experiences growing up. And so that kind of led me down the path of investigating the paranormal, supernatural, and what have you. A few years back, going back to that first incident, I always wanted to learn more about what this thing was that visited me in the night, because it had that really weird interaction. Why did it, cross my arms across my body? And some people had suggested, for a while, I just thought it was some nasty spirit or something. Some people had suggested, well, maybe it was, some sort of entity that thought you were dead and was putting you into a burial pose. Think of crook and flail out of something like ancient Egypt. Okay, that's an interesting idea. So I went through a hypnotic regression a few years ago. And in part of that, we went back to that particular incident. And what was interesting is we ended up channeling this entity. And when we did so, I got to see, it was really, really interesting. I got to see the perspective from that shadow entity. And so I could essentially see looking down onto my bed, which was fascinating because I'm looking at my 8-year-old self. And poor kid is, trying to scream. It's like, oh, that's sad. But then, I felt that emotion of the being that it wasn't there to try to hurt me or scare me or anything like that. It actually felt bad that it was scaring me. The whole crossing of the arms was trying to put me to like a self hug. I could actually see some additional things, like it patted me on the wrist to kind of reassure me, and it got out of there so it wouldn't continue to scare me.
Could I ask you a
So,
couple of questions on that,
yeah, go
Mike?
ahead.
I've had an experience kind of like that with my arms folded, like I was in a casket. I was
Mhm.
freezing cold. I was very cold. This just happened
Okay.
the last few years, and I was freezing cold. Were you cold, or did you? How was the touch of this entity? Was he cold also?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me what that felt like. Did it feel cold? Did it feel electric? Anything like that? And actually, it just felt like any other person. Taking me by the wrist and crossing my arms. It didn't feel abnormal, that part of it.
Mhm.
Aside from the fact that there was this thing pulling
Yeah,
my arms across my body.
it could have been an
So,
invisible ET, I guess, extraterrestrial. You talk about ancient alchemy and the secrets of the ouroboros. What's the
mhm.
ouroboros?
So the ouroboros that's really our most ancient alchemical symbol. It's the symbol of the snake eating its own tail. Goes as far back as we know now,
Mhm.
uh, on the burial shrine of King Tutankhamun. Now, likely older than that. They wouldn't have just for the very first time put this on his burial shrine, but it's basically the symbol of recycle and renewal. So, of course, they're going to put on a burial shrine because they want their king's soul to be renewed. But not only the renewal of life energy, the renewal of the planet, renewal of the universe, and so we see this as a symbol used for not just the beginning and end of a person's life, but also the beginning and the end of the universe, which will be constantly recycled.
Mhm.
And I liken this to, of all things, our modern research in Antarctica. in which the NITA project and the Ice Cube project, they're doing research there on neutrinos. Peer-reviewed published paper that came out about a year and a half ago, although some of the information leaked before that, that through this neutrino research, these scientists are postulating that we likely have a parallel universe running in reverse time. And so, what would that look like? Well, how could that possibly be symbolized?
Yeah.
And I think that the ancients, our ancient civilizations, were onto something here, because when you look at that symbol of the ouroboros, you have the duality that's in that symbol between basically the underbelly of the serpent and then the backside of it. It's usually depicted as two different colors or two different shades of
Right.
colors. And so here you have the two tracks, the one running one direction, one running the other. And when they meet, it's where the head is eating the tail. And so to me, that there is symbolic of the Big Bang, the beginning and end of the universe right there. And so when people ask, okay, what did we have before the universe? What's going to come after our universe is extinguished? Well, the universe, it will be recycled once again.
Yeah, I had that question when I was hanging around some kids when I was only about 7 or 8 years old. When you had your first experience, they said, "Think about this. Where's the end of space, or where's the end of where does the universe where universe end, or universes, maybe 11 of them the scientists have calculated. After that ends, what's after that? What do you think, Mike? Where's it all heading?" That's a deep thought.
Yeah, that's the age old question, right? Yeah, we do have multiple universes, and not even like the whole concept of the multiverse, and all these infinite number of universes that get spawned off based on decisions and all that sort of thing. But our theoretical physicists they've stated, look, there are other physical universes out there that they've formed up differently than ours, have different nuclear forces, chemical compositions, these sorts of things. And that in itself is just fascinating. So yeah, that makes you then wonder, okay, if there are multiple physical universes out there, then what are they inside of? That means there's something even bigger and grander than the universe. And so what's the beyond? What's the end game? It's the whole question of, why are we here?
Right.
And so when we go back to when we're talking about being in a simulation, when you look at the idea of a simulation, we're trying to learn something or experience something in particular. So flight simulator, we're learning how to fly. And so once we're finished with the simulation, hopefully we've learned something. Same thing with the driving simulation, those types of things. A video game or something like that, part of it's fun. Part of it is you are developing a skill, whether it's eye-hand coordination or something associated within the game world itself. So there's something that we're learning along the way. The question is always been, why? Why are we here learning these different things? Well, one, I believe that we love one another, help one another out. Okay. I also believe that we are the knowledge that we learn while we're here, we should be passing that on to the next generation. Again, talking about cycles, humanity seems to get caught in these nasty cycles. And the more information, more experience, more wisdom and knowledge we can pass on to the next generation, hopefully they won't get caught into one of those vicious cycles. Okay, that's wonderful. But they're still left with the big question, okay, why are we still doing those things though? Why are we passing on this knowledge? To what end? And that's the one that I still think that we haven't really yet been able to answer.
What about, you mentioned we're here to love and be kind and also forgive. Yeah. Jesus said that.
Sure.
And Mike, what do you think about Jesus as a man, or was he some entity because two angels produced him with his mother Mary? And so I have different, I have different opinions about that, but I believe in Jesus. He was, he was
Yeah.
actually here and he talked to people and he tried to teach them love and kindness, but he was over their heads. He had to talk in parables. And so what
Right.
do you think about it, Mike? I mean, is that where is God
Yeah,
on the outside? Is God on the outside of this big ball of these 11 universes or more? And he's out there just he's manipulating things like a computer. It's.
well, yeah, and that's the question. Okay, so exactly what is God then? Is a lot of people, and it's because of our religion over the years, where we've been taught that he's this old man sitting on a cloud or something like that, and
Mhm.
it's far beyond that. Why we've personified it in that way is a bit absurd. So is it some sort of conscious life force? Is it just intelligence? Is it eternal knowledge? That those are all wonderful questions that could be. You know, as far as Jesus, yeah, I believe yes, he was a real man. He was certainly here on earth. His teachings were absolutely wonderful. Yeah, and it's amazing to me a lot of the different things that he taught. Those that I won't say everyone, it's not all inclusive, but many that say that they follow his teachings today are actually doing the exact opposite and are doing things that he actually taught against, which just
Yes.
blows my mind.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, but yeah, unfortunately, along the way, organized religion basically ended up doing everything that they had been doing before he came along and just used him as the symbol for
To
keeping
catapult
us in the yeah,
their
uh, which,
credibility.
which
Yeah.
is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are going spiritual. I mean, we all have this,
Yeah.
we all have God in us. There's no doubt. Uh, you talk about also, I know we can go in deep in these subjects, and I know you can, but I just wanted to move along and get some of your.
Mhm.
Now you have this Shadow Dimension docu series. You just mentioned your
Yeah.
you just mentioned your you know in, event that you had with the shadow person.
Yep.
Uh, have you talked to other people about the shadow people? I'm just going back just to kind of
Yeah.
clarify it in your show. You've talked to other people who've seen shadow people, and what did you get from them, Mike?
Yeah. I've been collecting these accounts for many years, and you can read about a lot of them in my book, A Walk in the Shadows. The Shadow Dimension docu-series dives into that research from a little bit of a different angle, in which uh, not only are we looking for locations that have had reported shadow activity, but also have reported portal activity, to see if there is a correlation between the two. Are these energetic hotspots that generate this activity? Are they using portals to traverse from their dimension to another? Trying to answer those sorts of questions. Um, and yeah, I've talked to a lot of people. There's a large variety of different types of experiences that people have had, and that's what I really tried to break down within a walk in the shadows. I break down the different physical characteristics, because you have ones that just like humanoid beings is what we would call them. You have the hat wearing entities, you have hooded figures, you have mists, wisps, crawlers, all these assorted different physical characteristics. And of course, you have the sleep paralysis phenomenon associated with it. You have, and then I get into like, okay, what may they possibly be? Some of them are going to be human spirits that just can't fully manifest, show up as a shadow. You have some that are interdimensional beings. You have some that are extraterrestrial. Some may actually be astral projections. Some may be time slips. So you have a large variety of things that these could be, but they appear to us because our eyes only see in a very narrow spectrum.
Right.
These things that are different are using essentially the same modality to
Mhm.
enter into our plane of existence, and that's what our eyes see, and that's what it translates to us with our eyes.
Could, could it be that these entities might be invisible and they're just blocking light? Uh, Also, Mike, like
I mean,
ETs are invisible. They can be invisible.
they can be,
Yeah.
yeah. And some of these, we're talking shadows. Some of them may believe that they are actually invisible. So take it, okay, an ET that comes from some other planet, some other place in the cosmos. They may have some sort of cloaking mechanism in which they believe that they're going to be invisible to us. They may not totally understand the physiology of our eyes. Again, we see into a very narrow spectrum. Our eyes differ from the way cat's eyes works, or dogs, or any other animals.
Right.
We don't have eagle eye vision, right? So that said, their cloaking mechanism might not work properly with the way our eyes take in light, and that may come off as a shadow. That may come off as, some people report seeing a shimmer type person.
Yeah.
So that may be what we're seeing. It might actually be an ET that's there.
Right. I've seen ETs, and I've been there and done that, but you've got some interesting things going on here. You've really delved into a lot of different things. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned in your notes here that the nature of time and the paradoxes of time travel. I heard some say that you can't travel forward. Is that right, Mike? You can
No,
only
I believe you can. All time again is concurrent, so you can move up and down that stack. The trick is, how do you tune into those other moments? And that's where I think, so the writer Richard Matheson, who wrote both the book and the screenplay for Somewhere in Time, that's where I think he was onto something, where basically he had his character Richard essentially tune in his consciousness to another moment in time. So, and I believe that you could do that up and down the stack if you were able to tune your frequency to um, 2174. You could do that.
Now, do you believe that the military or science today has a way of to time travel that they can utilize, Mike?
Well, they're certainly trying. So, I mean, publicly, we know that they have developed a very small wormhole in the lab. It's on the quantum level. So they are attempting to do these sorts of things, whether it's time travel, develop portals, stargates, that sort of thing. Behind the scenes, uh, they likely have something in place. I mean, I can't speak definitively because I haven't been a part of those type of programs in my military experience. Of course, we do know that they have done things with like remote viewing and things of that nature. So if they've explored that realm, it makes complete sense that they would also explore things like time travel.
How about time slips? As you mentioned, I know a lot of abductees, and I myself, I've been I've been during a sighting of a UFO. I actually arrived home 30 minutes quicker or sooner. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how that happened, and I felt other types of time slips too. And you discussed time slips here, and that a lot of abductees talk about that too. You probably talked to a lot of them that had the same thing. What is it about a time slip, Mike, and how does it how do, how does it happen?
Yeah, so I guess I should probably define, at least in my vernacular, a difference between time slip and time loss, or just jumping ahead in time.
No.
So time loss, of course, many abductees, suddenly, you know wherever they go off to, and there's a lot of different ideas of, do they go off to, we'll say, the mothership? Do they go off to another dimension somewhere, and they come back, and to them it seems like 5 minutes have gone by, and for everyone else it's been an hour or days, or whatever it may
Right.
be. So, and I think that's the effect of, in many cases, they've gone off to another dimension somewhere. We look at, and we can correlate this with a lot of our legend and lore. It's actually historic in nature. When you look at things like the fairy lore, it's the same type of phenomena, where they were taken into these different realms, and they had a time loss event. And then I think that's another dimensional place that they were taken to. And when we talk about the different dimensions, our dimension that we're in, our consciousness, is the fourth dimension. That's what we call time. But fifth, sixth, seventh, and beyond, these other dimensions, they're outside of that. So what we call time, which again doesn't really exist, is going to work differently there. So if you're taken by an entity that's from, I will say, the seventh dimension, your experience there when we talk about time is going to be very, very different than here. So then what we call a time slip is really when two moments in time bleed into each other. When well, I'll just give a quick story here. Many people in the paranormal community are familiar with what's known as the Conjuring House. It's the farmhouse that the movie The Conjuring
Right.
was based off of. And I'm very good friends with the family. And that was a haunting that lasted 10 years. It was nothing like what happened in the movie. But they say the most significant thing that ever happened there was one night, the eldest daughter, Andrea, and then the mother, Carolyn, were awake. Andrea was helping Carolyn out with, getting a bite to eat, making some coffee, that sort of thing. Carolyn's sitting in the parlor, and all of a sudden, she notices over in the dining room area this family out of the 1700s just morphs into existence. There's a woman cooking over the hearth. In modern times, the fireplace had been boarded up had been for like 100 years, but there she is cooking over a fire. There's a couple of kids running around. There's two gentlemen sitting at a table with pewter steins. They turn and they look at Carolyn. They see her there, and the one elbows the other, points over at Carolyn, and says, "Well, would you look at that?" As if she was the ghost, or however they may have been seeing her. So these were two moments in time that were actually able to see her. She was looking into the past, and they were looking into the future.
That's fascinating. So that kind of explains ghost in a way. Is that right, Mike? I mean,
Some of them, yeah. Not all. And I think that's where a lot of people, people want like one single answer. So like, oh, okay, that's going to be a ghost. Or when I,
mhm.
start talking about shadows, oh, that's a shadow person. Is well, no, 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 that's one type.
Well,
So yes, this can explain some ghosts and hauntings and apparitions and those sorts of things. Others still are going to be, some human spirits that are kind of trapped here. Some of them are, could be an ET that we are interpreting as a ghost. So there's a lot of different other things that they could be. But yes,
yeah.
these can explain some of these events.
Yeah, there was a scientist in the UK that I talked to, and he said that all ghosts are ETs. I said, how did you come to that conclusion? Well, here's a question I usually ask, and I know my listeners always hear me ask this, especially with the experts like yourself and the prolific writer that you are, and all these topics. Uh, what's the difference between a poltergeist, a ghost, an angel, an ET, and I guess sometimes even Bigfoot that slips in and out? Mike, are they all the same? They come from the dimensions?
Well, I would say they all have similarities. Okay. But Dave, you and I have similarities, but we're not the exact same person, right?
Right.
um, you know, or my fiance, we have some differences, right? So, um, you know, do they have some sort of relationship? Well, if they're moving in and out of different dimensions, different planes of existence, well, that's their common characteristic. But that doesn't mean that a ghost is the same thing as an angel. It just means that they may be moving in and out of our world the same way. It's kind of like, okay, um another analogy, um for moving in and out of someplace. Take a car, a truck, and an airplane headed towards Chicago. All three of them get to Chicago. Doesn't mean they got there, the same way. And they're still obviously not the same vehicle.
Right.
So, and so I think you could look at, okay, what's the methodology that they're coming into this world? But that doesn't mean they're the exact same thing.
Okay, let's move on to something else here. You got so many interesting notes that I just would like, I want to tap into your mind about these things. Uh, how does the future influence our present day? And then I want to, you talk about Einstein, Tesla, Kaku, and other physicists, and actually Werner von Braun also. And a couple of them actually, when they ask them where they got their information or their scientific way of inventing things or whatever they were doing, a couple of them have actually pointed up and said up there. So you mentioned them, and also the influences of what the future influences the present.
Yeah. Yeah, if all time being concurrent, and everything is there as a whole, like we were talking about earlier, then that absolutely opens up the potential for elements from the future being able to influence the present or even the past. We have phenomenon today. We call it the Mandela Effect,
Mm-hmm.
in which that seemingly things have been changed over time. Now, I think some of it is just people misremembering, like branding and things like that. And certainly, you're not going to have a time traveler go back in time to change the box of Fruit Loops. That just doesn't even make any sense. It's so trivial. But there are other events over time that you have people from all over the world not connected to each other at all, even before the internet came along, that are remember different things being a certain way, and they're like, how in the world is this different now? And so I do believe that that is the
Is that quantum
influence of
entanglement? Is that quantum?
it. Yeah, it's going to be entanglement. And I had, I have an uncle who's a nuclear physicist, and he
That's
had
neat.
asked me, yeah, it's great. So he's going through my book, and like, oh boy, I got, so because my degree is in simulation program. I'm not a physicist. I'm just kind of outside the box, putting pieces together here. And so he was asking me about the whole, okay, all time being concurrent, that sort of thing. He starts asking me about, well, the Earth is, he's talking about time slips and things like that. The Earth is in this one particular location, say in 1984, like within the universe. Well, 20 years later, because we have the expansion of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be somewhere else physically within the universe. So how are those two things connecting to each other if it's still, this whole stack of time that you're talking about? And I told him, well, I didn't really get that deep into it within the book, because I was like, there's a lot of science in the book, but I didn't want to get too sciencey. But essentially, it would, to answer your question, it would be entanglement. And he's like, oh, yeah. This is a nuclear physicist. It's
You're
kind of like
yeah.
he had a like, oh yeah moment.
Okay, you're correct about that, because I've had physicists and doctors I've interviewed before,
Mhm.
and they've actually told me they've written books and they give it to the publisher, and the publisher said this is too technical. People reading it wouldn't understand it if you want to go to the wider audience out there. And they said rewrite it and make it simpler. Put it in layman
Mhm.
terms. You just mentioned that about your uncle, and I said, yeah, if he wrote a book, it'd be highly technical. So
Right.
you'd have to kind of dampen it down a little bit. Uh, Now, Einstein, Tesla, and Kaku and other physicists, do you think they got information from outside, or did time travel hit them, or time slips, Mike?
Yeah,
And
it's
you too,
well,
I think. Yeah, you've been.
well, it goes to that eternal knowledge, or what some people call, well, Carl Jung had the idea of the collective unconscious.
Mhm.
I call it eternal knowledge. Some people talk about the Akashic records. We're all kind of
Right.
talking about the same thing, that there is knowledge of the universe that is out there, that is persistent across all time, that we're able to tap into. And there are moments there where all of a sudden you'll have inventors from all across the world suddenly trying to all invent the same thing
Right.
without having any contact with each other, and it's like, how did they all get the same idea at the same time? They were each tapping into something. Now, um Tesla, I think, is a really, really good example of this, because he was so far ahead of his time. And this is a guy that, when he was a younger man in Serbia, he doesn't use the term astral projection, but essentially, uh, in his notes, and you read biographies on him, they all talk about it, that he was doing that, when he was a kid back in Serbia. So he was really, kind of in tune with the inner workings of the universe, and some of the ideas that he had perceived and was trying to put forth, they he was getting laughed out. Today we're like, oh yeah, Tesla had that idea back then. The idea of, well, I mean, wireless technology. We have that today. It's all over the place. He was trying to make it, global, and people were kind of, laughing at him. J.P. Morgan pulled his funding because of it, because he's pointing over at Marconi. Well, Marconi made that happen using Tesla's technology, by the way. From the shore to the ship. I'm going to go with him because I actually got to see it. And Tesla's like, yeah, that's nothing. That's nothing. We're going to take this across the world. He did, and I think that was the thing, is Tesla didn't want to step through it. He was just like, I have the idea, I know it'll work, let's do it. The idea of the cell phone, talking about, and he didn't know it was going to be a cell phone. He just knew that at some point in time, we were going to have the knowledge of the world on a device that could fit in our pockets. An example that I talk about in the book is during the Spanish-American War. This is the 1890s, so 130 years ago. He had developed what he called a teletomaton. And basically what this thing was, it was like a small little boat, submarine sort of thing that could shoot torpedoes that worked off of radio waves. It was really our first drone. Okay, 130 years ago, our first drone. And he perceived this idea. It's like, this is still small potatoes here. What I envision is this teletomaton would be able to analyze the situation, pick out its targets, and be able to fire these torpedoes. And his idea was that we could end conflict amongst it during a war, that people would no longer be fighting each other. You just let the machines have at it to try to actually save human lives here. But he was basically talking about artificial intelligence, and he even took it a bit further and said, I could build a teletomaton of myself that would look like me, act like me, respond like me, make decisions like me. It would be no different than me. He's talking about building a robot with artificial intelligence 130 years ago. Yeah. Of course, everybody laughed at him. Now, his vision for that, and this is where we can bring it back toward my ideas of what the simulation actually is. His ideas, of course, were, he was thinking it was going to be built on gears, wheels, radio waves, this sort of thing. He had no idea about the silicon microchip that was far ahead of his time. The silicon microchip was invented like 16 years after he died. So he had no concept of the type of technology it would take to actually be able to make that thing happen. But now we have it today. It's all over the place. And I think the same thing with our simulation, when we talk about, simulation being a computer. Now, I don't think we grasp the technology that it would take, because it hasn't been invented yet. We have no idea of what it is. Just like Tesla, he had the idea, but he didn't know the technology it would take.
Yeah, I think Tesla, he was either a time traveler or he was a hybrid alien. I don't know. But I also wanted to mention too that Edison kind of screwed over Tesla on this direct and on the different currents, direct current and I guess who alternating current, who invented that? That was
alternating
Tesla.
current was Tesla.
Yeah.
Edison was direct current. Yeah, and they had a battle over that. It kind of really took George Westinghouse to get in the middle there, and they ended up going with Westinghouse for the Chicago World's Fair, and so that's kind of where we ended up. Where alternating current ended up getting proliferated for use in long distances.
Yeah. Tesla didn't concern himself with money, but he needed money for his projects. But Edison had the contacts, and that's why he got the credit for alternating current and everything else. And he had the politics behind him, I guess. Tesla didn't. He wasn't a fighter for money or anything. He was just an inventor, and that's what he wanted to do. That's why I understand it. And Tesla. But I wanted to talk to you also, moving on here. There's so much we can talk about. Doppelganger and Vordog. You've heard of Vordog also? It's an ancient Norwegian, Swiss.
Yeah, Vertiger. Yeah.
Vertiger. Okay. I pronounced it wrong. But I actually saw double of I didn't see it. Other people saw doubles of me before I showed up at a dealership, and also at a hotel once. They said, well, you were just here. I said, no, I wasn't. And I almost got poked in the nose because of that. Could you explain to us what that is, Mike, a doppelganger and a Vordogger?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of these things, get chalked up to like evil twin sort of thing. That's kind of like the more legends and
Mhm.
lore behind it, a harbinger of death and all this stuff. And really, it's again, I believe it's a type of time slip. So people saw you, come in before you were there, and I've had people relate some of those stories to me, and it's the actions are almost identical. They're very, very similar. And a story that I like to tell for this is the famous poet, the German poet Goethe, where he was headed down a road toward Drossenheim. He was having an affair with a young woman there. He's kind of lost in his thoughts. And as he's walking down this road, all of a sudden he notices off on the other side of the road, there's this man in a gold trimmed gray suit. And he turns to get a better look at the guy and disappears. He's like, what the heck was that? There was a guy that was just there.
Yeah.
Where did he go? So, he took note of it, but kept heading on. A couple years later, he's walking down the road in the opposite direction. And he gets around to about that spot and looks down at himself. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm the guy in the gold trimmed gray suit. I'm wearing the suit right now. And so, and of course, it dawned on him that he was actually looking at himself. It was two moments in time that basically had slipped into one another. And I think the catalyst there for him was he was in a partially meditative state, being kind of lost in thought. Like when we zone out and we're driving down the road and we miss our exit because we were lost in thought, we were zoned out somewhere. I think the same thing with him. It's a slightly meditative state, and so I think he was tuning into his energy and got a glimpse of it. But if you look it up on Google, you're going to find it under these list of doppelganger events, and it's really not a doppelganger. It was just himself at another point in time.
So it's more or less, yeah. I think people saw me in some sort of a time slip twice and almost
Mm-hmm.
got in trouble twice, and that's I didn't know how to get out of that. But
Yeah.
we also we get into I guess we're talking about portals. You mentioned that before. Is this the way people are going to time travel? Like ETs might be time traveling through portals and even coming into your house through a small portal. Ghosts, do they come through portals too, Mike?
Well, I mean, if we're talking a physical means of time travel, I think it would be more along those lines. It's not going to be a DeLorean and a flux capacitor. I mean, that would be fun. It would be a lot of fun to jump in, go 88 miles per hour, and see the lightning encompass the car and all that stuff. It would be a lot of fun, but I don't think that's the way it's going to happen. And our theoretical physicists talk about going to a black hole and slingshotting around. That we're not going to a black hole anytime soon. Even if you got that close, it would tear your body apart. So it's not feasible. But we did mention before they are developing wormholes in the lab. So would we be able to not just develop a wormhole to another place in the cosmos, but could we do that to another point in time? I believe that is possible. I also believe, when we were talking about before, the idea of willing your consciousness to another point in time, that would have to do more with yourself, your own personal frequency and vibration, finding a more stable place in another point in time for a duration, to be able to experience more of that moment rather than some of these slips, to be able to spend a bit more time there. If we could figure out how to tune into that frequency a little bit better. And I think that will have to do more with meditation and what
Now,
have you.
frequencies are the secret. We're all made of frequencies, and
Yeah.
you see these different frequencies that they play on video and on YouTube and stuff, and you listen to those frequencies, and they're supposed to help clean up your pineal gland, your third eye.
Mm-hmm.
Can you discuss third eye and people with ESP? I noticed you mentioned ESP, and
Yeah.
third eye with a pineal gland is really important. I know my wife tells me I have a third eye, and that's how I see some of this dimensional stuff. And it's not that I'm crazy. I mean, like I've had schooling. I've got to my IQ is fine. It's up there, but it's just that I see these things sometimes, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't help it. So
Yeah,
could
and
you
I
explain?
think we're all able to. I think we're all able to. It's
Yeah.
just some people are more inclined to do it naturally. Some people have to practice up. It's kind of like picking up a baseball bat and swinging it at a baseball. Some people are going to just naturally be able to, smack the ball harder and farther than others. Some people, might not be so good at that. And, but if you practice a little bit, you might not be, as great as, like Babe Ruth or Ted Williams or somebody like that, but you might become at least good enough to, hit some balls around and, maybe get a single or whatever. So I think we all have the capability to do things like that. And I think people that are naturally have ESP and their pineal gland is really, really active. I believe that they are more inclined to be able to, of course, get these glimpses of the future. And basically it's, their consciousness is spending some time in that, on that wavelength, on that frequency, to be able to get a glimpse of these different events that are playing out. We do it while we sleep.
Yeah, I was going to
There's
ask
some
you.
dreams that are,
Yeah.
there's some dreams that are just dreams and fantasies, but other times, because our brain goes through several different wave states while we're asleep, and sometimes, depending on the wavelength that we're on, the frequency that we hit, we're able to move to another point in time and get to see the whole thing play out. And it blows our minds when a week, a month, or whatever it is later on, all of a sudden we're in the situation and it's happening. It's like, I just had a dream about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although scientists are actually agreeing that in our deep sleep, we go to the fifth dimension in our dreams. And you just alluded to that too. You also alluded to baseball too, and that's your favorite pastime.
Yeah. I use some baseball analogies. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But Noah, I guess what I'd like to do, we're heading into about the last 5 minutes of this hour. Could you tell us a little bit about your books and especially the book that you got out now, and talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, latest book travels through time. A lot of what we've just been talking about here inside the fourth dimension, time travel, and stacked time theory. So yeah, it gets into a lot of these different topics in a deeper level. Again, there's a lot of science in there without being too sciencey. There's a lot of metaphysics in there without being too metaphysical. And I think at its heart, it's actually a philosophy book. So yeah, definitely, please pick that up. It's available wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If your brick and mortar store doesn't have it, they can order it.
I will
my
post the links. I will post the links on my narrative. I just wanted to go through these books. Encounters with the Paranormal. Encounters with the Paranormal. You wrote several of those. Ghostorian, Case Files. So you're into ghosts also. You've written these ghost stories, books, and A Walk in the Shadows. Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. I was in Alaska in Fairbanks for 2 years. I only saw a couple of little glitterings in the sky of what I thought could have been a UFO, but I didn't see anything really fantastic in Alaska.
I was up there for 3 years.
Really?
I was at Elmendorf Air Force Base.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
yeah, and we actually, many of us in the basement of the Alaska Command Building saw a lot of shadow activity down there. So yeah, that was not just me. That was several people witnessed those. So, but yeah, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle dives into a lot of the strange activity up there, UFOs, the different cryptids, paranormal activity, of course, missing people and airplanes and things like that.
Yeah, and you've been a ghost researcher. You have a lot of ghost books here. System of the Dead, Ghost of Maryland. So you have Ghost and Legends of Oklahoma, the Cowboys. A lot of interesting books. If you're interested, I mean, Mike is really covering a lot of information here, a lot of paranormal stuff, and it's amazing that you're stacking this all together, like we was talking about stacking, dimensions. But I see that you put in a lot of research in a lot of this stuff, and it's fascinating, Mike. It's really, you've done a great job and a good service, and people read these books and take a look at them. And actually, I will post the platforms that Rick has, and so I'll post them on the narrative also, so people can contact these different outlets and find your books. And I think it'd be very interesting. I guess got one last question. You said the future actually determines what's going on now in the present. I'd like you to sum up your thoughts, in which you're a very deep thinking person. your thoughts about what's going on in this world and what's going to happen to all of us, Mike.
Oh, wow.
That's a big one. I know. I say that to the
It
end.
kind of is. I mean, I think we need to, be forward thinking and look toward the future. Take care of our planet. I mean, there's a balance.
Right.
There's a balance. Take care of our home where we are at now, because this is where we live. We needed to survive. But we need to look to the stars as well, and not just from the sense that whether you get into population growth, or climate change, or pollution around the world, whatever. Um, Aside from all that stuff, our planet is not here forever. At some point in time, the sun will become a red giant, and that's not happening overnight one day. Over time, it will become this, and it will obliterate our planet. So, for the survival of the species at some point in the future, we do need to be forward thinking and look toward the cosmos to eventually inhabit. And we may have already come from somewhere else before. So,
Yeah. I
I
think
think
we
we need
have.
to encourage our, those that are looking toward the stars.
Mhm. I think we come from Mars, and they said our DNA is older than 4.5 billion years old. So our DNA must have been here before the Earth was formed.
Correct. Yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
we're in a real fascinating time, because we're
Yeah,
like right in the middle of the existence of our planet. Yeah, the
right.
Earth is 4.5 billion years. We only have about another 5 billion yet left. So we're at a real fascinating moment. We're right
Yes,
in the
we are.
middle of the planet's existence.
And I want to thank you for covering a lot of the paranormal bases and enlightening people. And I would like for people to look up Mike Ricksecker. He's an author, researcher, and filmmaker, and he has 13 books. Well, his 13th book will be out. And we just talked about that, shadow dimensions and everything. So if you're interested in everything from A to Z in the paranormal, Mike Ricksecker has done it. So look him up and take a look at his books. I want to thank you so much, Mike, for being on the
Thank you,
show.
Dave.
I was really excited. I told the wife that, wow, this guy's covered all the bases. This is scary in a way, to interview somebody that's so well versed in a lot of different things. But I enjoyed it. Enjoyed talking to you. You're a deep thinker, and you're a brilliant guy. And folks, you've been listening to Dave Emmons of the Strange Reality and Mike Ricksecker. I hope someday I have him back. I guess soon, and we can talk about more. But if not, he's a busy guy. But it's fascinating topic we covered. Thanks everybody, and look up Mike Ricksecker. So thank you so much. Bye now.